All right, today we're diving into the lives of two literary powerhouses from totally different eras who had one big thing in common. They believed the written word should be a weapon against power. We're going to explore how Ben Jonson and George Orwell used the writing to take on the establishment and what we can learn from their fight.
I mean, it's the ultimate question, right? If you're an artist living under some kind of oppressive rule, can your words actually make a difference against a king or a dictator? This was the exact challenge that really defined the entire lives of both Ben Jonson and George Orwell.
So, on one side, you've got Ben Jonson. He was brilliant, kind of cranky, and Shakespeare's biggest rival. Then you've got George Orwell, the 20th century guy, whose warnings about the future seem to get more real every single day. We're talking different centuries, different tools, but they had the exact same rebellious fire inside. Now, this kind of defiance doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. For both Jonson and Orwell, that anti-authoritarian spirit was really forged in the fires of their own personal struggles and a deep, deep sense of injustice. Just try to picture this for a second. You are a star student at Cambridge, one of the best universities in the world, and your stepfather, a bricklayer, yanks you out of school and forces you into manual labor. That was Ben Jonson's actual reality. And that frustration, that feeling of having your life totally derailed by someone else, well, that planted the first seeds of rebellion. Okay, now let's jump forward about 300 years. A young George Orwell finds himself as a colonial police officer, basically enforcing the will of the British Empire way out in Burma. But instead of feeling proud, the whole experience just filled him with this profound disgust for imperialism. He was seeing the ugly side of absolute power up close and personal. So what did Jonson do? You think he just stuck around laying bricks? No way. He ran away from that life and joined the army. He was looking for any escape he could find. This wasn't just a simple career change. It was him flat out rejecting the life someone else tried to force on him. Orwell's path was different, but it tells you just as much about him. He chose to put himself through hardship. He went and lived among the poorest people in Paris and London, not like a tourist, but to actually understand their struggles so he could give them a voice. That choice right there tells you everything about his commitment to finding the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it was. So both of these guys took these really raw life experiences and funneled them directly into their work. For them, writing wasn't just art, it was ammunition. So let's take a look at the specific literary weapons they cooked up to fight their battles. Jonson's weapon of choice was something called the comedy of humors. It's pretty clever. He'd create characters that were completely dominated by one single personality flaw, like greed or vanity. By doing this, he could make fun of powerful people without actually naming them. He could expose a corrupt court official or a social climber and turn them into a walking punchline for everyone in London to laugh at. Orwell, though, he was up against a totally different kind of monster, 20th century totalitarianism. This wasn't just about a few corrupt nobles. This was a political system that wanted total control over every single aspect of your life, right down to what you were allowed to think. And that became his lifelong enemy. And their writing styles were perfectly suited for their targets. Jonson was a classicist, so he used these really rigid, ancient literary forms as a kind of moral weapon. He was using literary order to criticize what he saw as the moral chaos of his time. But for Orwell, the big enemy was propaganda, language that's meant to confuse and deceive you. So his weapon was the exact opposite, brutally clear, simple writing. He used it like a disinfectant to cut through the lies and expose the truth. So with their weapons ready to go, both writers took aim. And they didn't punch down. They aimed their literary cannons directly at the highest, most powerful people in the land. And yeah, this came with some very real risks. Jonson co-wrote a play that was so savage toward the ruling class that the government didn't just ban it, they tried to erase it from existence. We don't have a single copy left today. Orwell's Animal Farm, a direct allegorical attack on the Soviet Union, had a totally different outcome. It sparked a global debate that's literally still going on. I mean, this line just says it all, doesn't it? With this one single sentence, Orwell exposed the entire rotten hypocrisy at the heart of authoritarian communism. It's just a perfect piece of political writing. It's simple, it's memorable, and it is devastatingly true. And here's what's so incredible. Orwell didn't just write a scary story. He basically wrote our modern vocabulary for oppression. When we talk about Big Brother watching us or the thought police, we are literally using the language that Orwell gave us to talk about the anxieties of our own time. So, of course, their lives came to an end. But their influence? Oh, that definitely did not. The rebellious spirit of Jonson and Orwell has been echoing through the centuries, shaping literature and political thought in some really profound ways. Ben Jonson, the troublemaker who was forced to be a bricklayer, was eventually celebrated by the very establishment he loved to criticize. But maybe his most revolutionary act was publishing his own works in a giant, fancy book. By doing that, he basically declared that a living playwright, which was seen as just a trade, was a serious artist, as important as any ancient author. That single move helped invent the modern idea of the author. Orwell's legacy is, well, it's everywhere. His name itself became an adjective, Orwellian, a universal shorthand for a nightmare state of surveillance and control. His books are required reading all over the world, and the Orwell Prize is still one of the biggest honors a political writer can get.
And that brings us right back to the present, doesn't it? The fight that Jonson and Orwell dedicated their lives to is far from over. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought. In an age of new empires and new kinds of control, who are the writers, the artists, the rebels who are picking up the pen and writing against power today?